Alright, here's an interesting one. So yesterday I did a video talking about the Dubois Usyk rematch, the undercard, and how only a Telma is announced for it, no opponent, but like there's literally no one else. There is literally no one else, and it's Wembley Stadium. And I listed a couple of the heavyweights Frank Warren has on his stable just off the top of my head. It was Adelaide, amongst others. And I don't think I mentioned Joseph Parker. And I had talked about Joseph Parker in a previous video because for me, it would make sense to put Joseph Parker on the undercard because he's essentially going to be targeting the winner. In fact, he's mandated to face the winner, whether it be Usyk or Dubois. Now, likelihood is, and I said, if it's Usyk who wins, I can't see him going down that road of fighting Joseph Parker. If it's Dubois, different story. Well, the Ring magazine caught up with Joseph Parker and he said the following: it would be great if I could be on the same card as Usyk versus Dubois. Of course, and again, there's more to obviously read here, but it would make the most sense. Joe Parker has built up a lot of good rapport with the English audience. I know he hasn't fought in, he hasn't fought in the UK in a while now, actually, now that I think about it. Primarily been, actually, when was the last time he fought in the UK? It might have been when he fought Jack Massey. I think that was in Manchester, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been a while. It's been over 2 years since he fought in the UK. Now, I don't begrudge, before I carry on reading, I don't begrudge Joseph Parker a reasonably straightforward fight. I don't begrudge him that. I really don't. He's had a couple of fights that on paper were hard, or should have been hard. Wilder should have been hard, it wasn't. Zhang was hard, and then his last fight against Martin McCauley should have been a world title fight. It really should have been hard, but in the context, it was never going to be. So you could argue that was his easy fight because the context of it, you had a guy with basically no notice. Well, he says, Derek Chisora is looking for his 50th fight. I know I've beaten him twice, but I've never had a trilogy in my career, and Derek always brings it. So Joseph Parker, for his next fight, potentially, he wants it to happen at Wembley Stadium, and he wants it to be potentially against Derek Chisora in a trilogy fight. Now, the first fight they had was not great at all. It had one moment of drama in the first round where Parker got dropped, and that was it. The second fight was a little bit better. It was more punishing for Chisora. Parker had him down a couple of times. But the rewatch value of both those fights is not really there for me. And that was a much more fresh Derek Chisora. He was definitely a lot fresher back then. Now I'm kind of like, do I really want to see that? And to be honest with you, Derek Chisora is, I really don't know the ins and outs with the IBF because back in April, I think it was April anyway, he was announced as the IBF mandatory challenger, but they wanted to order Hrgovic to face Sanchez, and it's a bit convoluted, but I think Chisora is the IBF mandatory. So this would actually be like a bit of a consolidation fight, so to speak. You'd have a grand mandatory, for want of a better word, a super mandatory. Like if the WBO mandatory in Parker, and you have the IBF mandatory in Chisora. But, as I said, Chisora fought Parker in 21. It's a long time ago now. It's nearly 4 years ago. And, yeah, there's a lot more wear and tear on Derek Chisora now than there was back then. And there was wear and tear on him back then, don't get me wrong. Quite a bit of it. But right now, I don't know. I mean, even in the fights he's won, like against Oliver Lane, like against that other Joe Joyce, you could see a lot of wear and tear. You could see a lot of miles on the clock. You didn't really see it as much against Verlaine because Verlaine was just shocking that night. But you've seen it against Joe Joyce. You've seen it against Kubrat Pulev. You've seen it in particular against Gerald Washington, of all people. You really shouldn't have seen it against him. So I do think there's enough slippage there for Chisora. Makes this fight fairly straightforward for Joseph Parker. But you never know. You never know. But Parker is on a good run of form. The question is that he is mentioned Chisora. They are both Queensberry fighters. It has to be taken into consideration. But would Frank do that? Would Chisora take it? Chisora would have to be well compensated to take that fight. Very well compensated. Now, he might very well be, because you would imagine you would do that, probably co-main. It would certainly put a lot of butts in seats at Wembley Stadium. They definitely would. Having that as a co-main event at Wembley Stadium. Wembley Stadium's in London, right? It's not central London, but it's still London. And Chisora, big following there, 50th fight. It would be, I say it would be, Chisora gives so many mixed messages. 1 minute it's going to be last fight in London, there's last fight in Manchester, and the last fight's going to be in Zimbabwe. Then it's not the last fight in the UK, it's just the last fight in Manchester, and then he's going to carry on past 50. So with Chisora, you never really know what you're going to get with him. He is as unpredictable as the weather on a spring day in the UK. He really is. You never know what he's going to do. He's going to retire 1 minute, he's going to carry on the next. He's going to fight hypothetically Francis Ngannou next, then he wants Anthony Joshua, then he wants you just don't know with this guy. I suspect he wouldn't go down the Joseph Parker road. I just suspect he wouldn't, alright, unless the money was really quite good. And quite frankly, I've said this before and I'll say it again with Eric Chisora, I don't think he should. I think he should fight Dillian Whyte for fight number 50, and that's it. Because that fight right there is winnable for Chisora. In my opinion, it would draw big numbers. You do it on the zone. I'm going to be cheeky with this one, but could you potentially, I'm not saying you could you potentially put it on pay-per-view? Maybe not now, but it would still draw an audience. It would do good numbers in the O2 or in Manchester, wherever you did it in the country. And I think it's a more winnable fight for Chisora, less likely to take any damage. Seriously, I think he wouldn't take much damage from Dillian Whyte at this point. Has a good chance of stopping him, I think, quite frankly, at this point. Joe Parker, you'll take damage. He's bigger, he's stronger, he seems to be hitting harder, more aggressive. Yeah, and I worry about, I've said this before, you listen to Chisora's speech, you know, when people say it about Joe Joyce, I'm like, I don't know. When people say it about Chisora, it's like, yep. There's not even any ifs or buts. It's like, it's a resounding, yep, we got a problem right there. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on this. Joseph Parker saying that he wants to fight Derek Chisora for fight number 50 for Chisora on the undercard of Usyk Dubois. I think it would be a big mistake to not have Joseph Parker feature on the undercard in some form of capacity. I really do. I think he deserves that run out. I think he needs to be back in the UK, and I think that if he's going to face the winner, then, you know, keep him there, keep him relevant. Against Chisora, I don't begrudge him an easy fight, and I think it would be an easy fight, but I just don't see that fight happening. I really don't. He's probably not going to fight Caballel, you would imagine. I really don't know who you'd put. I mean, like, this is the bad thing about Dillian Whyte. He is so over the hill. He's so far gone. But, like, Team Joshua want to fight him because it's an easy fight and it's a rematch. You can sell it well. Same with the trilogy fight with Chisora. Same with the rematch with Joseph Parker. He's just so sellable to the casual audience, Dillian Whyte, even though he's shot to bits. That's just the name on everyone's lips, to be honest with you. So let me know your thoughts on that. As I said in the comment section below, I'll leave it there, people. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. Peace.